Welcome back, everybody, to the Retro Blood as we continue this 1980s Alison's Picks month, talking some ghost stories from the 80s, talking these ghostly figures that will haunt your nightmares. They will haunt you in real life. They will make sure that you remember their stories of their traumatic life, that they cannot leave this realm of Earth yet. Because up next, if you all like old people, if you like old people telling old people ghost stories, if you like this guy named David and Don who want to fuck the same ghost, who this ghost got killed by old people, and if you like old people talking to their old wives, then this is the review for you, brother, because the Retro Blood is talking all about 1981 Ghost Story. J.H. Alison, James Kline. What's happening, Alison? How is your what are they called? What are they called? The Chess Society? How's that going for you? Are you in that society?
The Chowder Society.
Yeah, the Chowder.
The Chowder Society.
Oh, I get it, because of New England. Oh, I get it now.
Right. Yeah, that's why.
That's funny. Okay. How's that
so I'm taking you didn't like this movie either.
It was all right. A lot of old people saying old stuff. I like it. I like that one character, James, who was like, I'm too old for all this. Like every line, that's what he would say. I'm just too old for all this. What the fuck are you even in the movie if you're too old? I'm too old, brother. I can't walk 2 feet. I'm too old.
So obviously I picked all 4 of these movies because I love all 4 of them. So Lady in White, okay, I can see why, you might not be like right up your alley, and probably not what you expected me to pick. So we're ramping it up a little bit this week. Originally we were going to do the Entity this week, but we had some technical difficulties because that Blu-ray is way fucking out of print. You can't stream the movie anywhere. So now we're going to have to watch my out of print Blu-ray.
Oh, and also too, like if you go on the intranet, everybody, like Google, it'll bring you to a website saying, "Oh, don't worry about it, everybody. The Entity is on Apple." So I'm like, "All right, I don't have Apple," so I signed up for Apple, and then man, we have the Entity, but it's all from the 2000s.
Yeah, like there's a couple of different Entity movies.
But like it has a picture from the 80s one, but it only lets you like download the 2000 one. So he tricked me.
All right. So they bamboozled you. So we ramped it up a little bit though. This movie's a little bit darker than last week, right? So I figured you might like this a little bit better.
I don't know, man. That child murder stuff was pretty dark from last week.
That's true. You're right. Child murder is usually pretty dark. I mean, but yeah, I don't know.
This one just had a bunch of 50s dude being super horny on that British chick, and then like she like the dudes. Remember, they were like young when they killed her.
But they killed her in like the 30s
or whatever. All right. There were some nice shaven young men who I guess all wanted to bang her, but she said no or something. So they one pushed her and then they threw her in the back of a Jeep.
Well, kind of. I mean, we'll get there when we get that part of the movie. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. But yeah, I don't know. I like this movie. It's to me, this is a classic horror story. This is like this movie was made in 1981, but it could have been made in 1955. You know what I mean? It's just like a classic horror movie. It has a bunch of classic actors in it, like Fred Astaire and Melvin Douglas. And it has Alice Krige, who played Alma. I know her mostly as the Borg girl from the Star Trek movie.
Yes.
The Star Trek First Contact. She played the Borg lady in that. But this is her much younger. She's like 25. I don't know. I just love it. I love the flashbacks. I love stories that have like, okay, this happened a long time ago and it's affecting what's happening now. Very Stephen King like, right? It's based on a book by Peter Straub, who is, in my opinion, the second best horror author of modern times. Stephen King being the best, in my opinion, but Peter Straub is the second best. And him and Stephen King and Peter Straub are friends with each other, and have written a couple of books together. But he's not as famous as Stephen King, but he wrote some really, really good stories, including this one.
Yeah, I mean, the story, like you're saying, was pretty cool. How it like intertwined with itself, and then we would like actually see the flashbacks as they kind of like talk about them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And this did have like an all-star cast with some of the actors and actresses that we have talked about before in other movies. So we'll get into
John Houseman.
Yep, John Houseman. There's a bunch of different ones in there. But you know, like every Retro Blood, we will start off first, of course, with the history segment. Quick thing, obviously, you guys can see I'm not in the Retro Blood studios today. I'm on assignment.
You're on the road. Yeah, you're on assignment.
I am basically what I am as I'm in New England right now, and I'm trying to find the Chowder Society. All I've found so far was just some chowder food. Nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about when it says this Chowder Society. So I'm trying to find my way in because I have a bunch of stories for them. All right.
Yeah, make sure you don't fall off of a bridge.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's going to happen. Or I fall out the window naked, like our boy David did.
Yeah. That's probably more likely for you to fall out the window naked.
Boy, wait till we get there. It's going to be a fun episode. All right. But everybody, like I said, like every Retro Blood, we don't just give you the full movie review. We give a little extra. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're kind of like Alma/Eve. We don't only taunt you for a little bit, but we also give you some like extra, like, you know what I mean? Like we will make sure your life is surrounded by our mystery of what is happening in the meadow and the pro wrestling. That's what we do here. All right, so this movie came out, I believe it came out December 18th. Have I got that correct?
18th is what I have. Yeah, 1981.
Yeah, December 18th, 1981. So we're at the tail end of the 1981 over here. Some pretty cool stuff is happening. So I'll go first because I do want to ask Alison about that video he sent me here in a second with the female with the coloring crowns on her.
I knew you'd be excited. I knew you'd be excited about that.
All right, so my wrestling is a little quick. So, you know, during this time, Mid-South Pro Wrestling, which we have talked about here before on the show, was a pretty good territory, pretty famous territory in the wrestling realm around this time. And I think we might have talked about this before, but I'm not sure if we talked about him doing it in the Mid-South. But I watched this particular episode of Mid-South, but it actually came out a day after this movie aired, December 19th.
19th?
Yes, but there's two prominent things I wanted to, well, maybe three prominent things I wanted to talk about with this particular episode, which you all can find on the Peacock, if you all still have that. I don't know if they're even going to keep Peacock anymore. It seems like nobody goes, because like you could literally just watch all the pay-per-views. You can watch all the old stuff on YouTube now. Like, I feel like Peacock's like going away.
Well, that's the plan, right? Like after their deal with Peacock ends after this year or part of next year, maybe. And then the idea is they're going to go away from Peacock altogether, from what I understand.
So,
but we're going to lose a lot of this old stuff, though. I have a feeling. Like, I have a feeling they're not going to navigate. That's not the word I'm looking for. Migrate. They're not going to migrate all this old stuff over to Netflix or even to the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I don't know.
I don't know if I'll see Mid-South or, you know, AWA and shit go to YouTube, but maybe. I'm not sure. Because I know they're putting.
See, I love that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Talk about it so it makes it easier.
I know. I love seeing that stuff. Wrestling that I've never seen before. And like, I don't know. Like, I know they're getting the episodes of Nitro up there and that kind of thing, but that's sad. I don't want to see that stuff go away.
They have also, too, on the YouTube, they have been putting some like older WCW stuff, like from the 90s, like early 90s. They've been putting that on there too. So not just like Nitros and Thunders and stuff, but anyway, so I watched this episode of Mid-South, which you can find on the Peacock. It's December 19th, 1981. The show opens with a very high looking Ted DiBiase. Like this, he looked like this. Everybody on video, he looked like this. What's that? Like, I mean, he looked like he was out the fucking night partying or doing who knows what. But he likes to start off.
I'll guarantee he was.
I was like, oh fuck. And he had like this cool like leather jacket on. And he's just sitting there like, oh yeah, brother. How much I'm getting paid for this? Because he had to do commentary for the whole night.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he's basically on commentary night with Boy Pierce. All right. And so like the funny part I found out about this was Boy Pierce was going to like he was like naming all the stars of the South who's going to be here: Dusty Rhodes, Ted DiBiase, the Samoan SWAT team, Junkyard Dog, and he told the audience that, hey, you all should like write us in and tell us what dream matches you want to see. And I was like, man, that's a pretty cool concept. You know what I mean? You can just like write in like, oh yeah, I want to see Ted DiBiase versus Samoan SWAT guy 1. That's my dream match.
That was great.
And they could do it. So I thought that was a pretty cool play. And that was the thing in the 80s. You know why they did that, Allison? Why they had a lot of people writing in? So in the 80s, it wasn't like you can subscribe to your email in 1981. You know what I mean? To like your wrestling, so they can give you the program. So what they would do is they would come up with these like gimmicks where like, hey, write us in, give us your address, and let us know what matches you want to see. Or WWF would do like, hey, write us in and tell us what, so you can get subscribed to this program. And when they did that, or like, hey, there's a contest going on, write us in and see if your essay or whatever would reach the contest. And the reason they would do that for marketing purposes, because they would collect the addresses. So if the territory came around your area, they would send you a mailer saying, hey, Mid-South is coming to your area on this date. All right. So it's basically, it was a form of marketing to get the addresses so they can market out their product when they came to town. All right. Unlike nowadays where you got like Facebook, Instagram, and all that shit. They don't really have to do that anymore. But back in the day, it was all about the mailers. All right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's bands did that. You signed up for a mailing list and they sent you shit in the mail. And then when they knew where their stuff was coming from, so they're like, oh, we got 10,000 letters from this city. Let's go play a show here. That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Let's make sure our records get there. Yeah.
So the first thing I noticed was on this particular episode. All right. Paul Jones was on here. So Paul Jones, we've had talked about him before, which, I forget that he was a wrestler, but he was a pretty good wrestler, pretty jacked looking wrestler at the time. Later on in the 80s, he'll be mostly known for the manager coming out of Crockett.
Yeah.
But in Mid-South, he was actually a pretty prominent wrestler. And no joke, I mean, I have never seen anybody rip off superstar Billy Graham as much as a beautiful, or whatever his name, gorgeous Paul Jones was. Okay? I mean, this guy, like, to the T, ripped Billy Superstar off. I mean, his gear, the way he would do promos, the way he would talk. I mean, like, whoa, like that's like super gimmick infringement. But back then they didn't care probably. So it was very interesting.
No, but I mean, Scott Steiner did the same thing.
No, but
Scott Steiner basically became.
He did. The look basically was, but the promos were not. Scott Steiner's promos were not anything like Billy.
Well, okay, that's true. You're right.
I'm talking about this Paul Jones guy had the mannerisms. He had like the way he would talk and say, like, he would talk in like that Muhammad Ali riddles and shit. So it's very interesting. So the biggest thing about this one though is the Iron Sheik was new to the territory at the time, and they would do the Iron Sheik Club Challenge. Do you remember what that is, Alison? The Club Challenge.
That's the one where they flip the clubs around their shoulders or whatever.
Yeah, they're flipping.
The Iranian Club Challenge, and then what's his name? The only guy, one of the only guys that could beat him at it was the chicken wing guy. What's that guy's name? His name leaves my mind right now. Big WWF champion. Bob Backlund. Yeah, yes. Bob Backlund could beat him in the club, the Iranian clubs. But anyway, so they're gonna have an Iranian club match.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So they're basically doing that. So Paul Jones did about 50 of them. All right. And then there was the Iron Sheik one, and then basically they were keep challenging people to before they could even Iron Sheik could even do it, they would have to do more than 200 to challenge him.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
it was a whole big gimmick. They kept bringing on different people each week to do this club challenge and stuff. So pretty good, a little episode. So Mid-South, like if you all like, 80s wrestling, Mid-South is kind of like how Ring of Honor was back in the day, where you would have match after match after match after match, and mostly some of them squash matches, some of them real matches, and then they would have one angle. So that's what their TV show was like. So pretty good stuff. I would say it's pretty fun. This episode didn't like wow me too much, but I did appreciate the Paul Jones, jacked Paul Jones being just like superstar Billy Graham. It was pretty fun for all of our wrestling out there.
And then we were eventually going to get at some point the Ted DiBiase Samoan SWAT team #1 match.
Yeah. Well, I wrote that one in, so I'm waiting for it.
Right. I see. Yeah. Is that Rikishi or Samu?
Actually, I don't remember who they were. Probably Samu.
No, yeah.
Whatever the
I'm not sure who was. I'm not sure who was one, but Rikishi, who was under the name Fatu, was in the Samoan SWAT team, was Samu.
Yeah, but this is like
at this
Mid-South.
time. Is this before? Maybe they weren't there until the mid 80s. Yeah. Maybe there's an earlier Samoan SWAT team.
Let's see. I'm gonna look at it.
Anyway,
Mid-South. All right, so while I'm looking this up, you tell us what we got going on in the world of the metal/rock music during this time. All right.
All right.
Well, before you get into that, Alison, I figured it out. So it was actually the Wild Samoans.
Okay.
And Sika during this time. So SWAT team would be the other one, more into like the 90s, but the Wild Samoans.
The Samoan SWAT team was like in the mid 80s up into the 90s. But yes, that was where Rikishi got his start.
Yeah, because the Wild Samoans, they debuted in Mid-South Wrestling in April. So they were already a pretty prominent tag team by the December of 1981. But anyway, what do we got going on for the metal music, brother? What are we doing listening on our way to see some ghost old man stories?
All right. Anyway, so I couldn't find a lot of metal. We're at the end of the year here in 1981. So most albums are already out and most tours have already happened. So I wanted to talk about a classic rock band that we wouldn't get a lot of a chance to talk to because they didn't do a whole lot during the 80s. But I want to talk about the Rolling Stones. So the Stones, as most people know, they're probably one of the second biggest band of the 60s after the Beatles, I would imagine. They're probably the most famous known band. Anyway, so they were on tour. They toured most of 1981. They were one of those bands that were kind of fighting they were trying to fight this like 1980s thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like what, what I'm saying? Like we talk about all the time how like a lot of these like 70s bands, 60s, 70s bands, like when the 80s happened, it kind of just killed, whatever momentum they had. Cause the 80s was all about a different kind of time, a different kind of,
the free spirit
look
of the 70s.
Yeah. Things like that. So they didn't have, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say. They didn't have the times were so different. Punk changed everything and new wave changed everything. So nobody really wanted to go back and listen to these old bands anymore. So the Stones were trying to like find some way to be relevant in 1981. But they'd released an album. They released the album Tattoo You, which we've talked about before too. And they went on tour to support it. But they were hugely successful. Like they did a stadium tour. They were playing outdoors in stadiums. Which a lot of bands weren't doing at the time. And then they did, a successful tour that whole year. Basically, it was sort of historic in a way because they didn't tour for about 3 years, which in those days was a long time. Like most bands would go on tour every year, every other year at least. But they hadn't toured for 3 years, and Mick Jagger didn't really want to tour. But Keith Richards had just gotten sober. He just like beat heroin for the 40th time probably and stopped drinking, and he wanted to go on tour. So they were doing They were doing this tour through the whole year. This particular moment that I'm talking about was on December 18th. They played in Hampton, Virginia, which was the second to the last show of the tour. It's notable for a couple of reasons. One, it was the first ever pay-per-view music concert. So this was broadcast on pay-per-view, which is the beginning of that clip that I sent you, was the beginning of that pay-per-view.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was astounding because I really wanted to send you another track, another clip from it, but I thought that clip was hilarious because at the beginning of that clip, as you alluded to, they were showing, they were advertising what radio stations played the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Which I guess is something you did at that time. But like they were showing it, they were advertising it because it was painted on like this naked girl.
Yeah.
And like it slowly goes up. Yeah, like it'll show it'll say like WKRP, whatever, blah, 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 and its numbers. And it would be like painted on her leg. And then it would go up her leg and then it would go up her ass and then like across her stomach. And then eventually you can see her boobs and like her face is all painted up. I just thought that was cool. But it does show the beginning of the show, the clip I showed you where they're playing Under My Thumb and like the huge in the round stage turns around and then they're all playing. It's also notable because it's Keith Richards' 38th birthday.
Oh, okay.
So that was like his show that happened on his birthday. And if you go back and watch the clip of them playing Satisfaction, which is the first song of the encore, they're playing it. And then like Keith is just like, I mean, he just looks cool as shit. Like he's ripped and he's playing his Telecaster and it looks awesome. And he's playing the song and then like he looks up and he looks past Mick Jagger. And then all you see him do is take off his guitar and this fan runs on stage and he like smashes the fan in the face with a guitar. And then he puts it like right back on. It feeds back a little bit. He puts it right back on and goes right back into the song. It's not out of tune or anything. Coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. Now that's rock and roll, man. Like, rock and roll, like he just like smashes this fucking guy right in the face and then like, goes right back into playing the song. I mean, that's what rock and roll is all about right there.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, this was Exactly. But yeah, you can see most of the show on YouTube because it was on pay-per-view. It's really high quality. They also made a movie, which was filmed in the summer, directed by Hal Ashby, called Let's Spend the Night Together, which is filmed. The first half of it's filmed in an outdoor stadium show, which happened during the daytime. And then the second half of it was filmed in an indoor show, which is dark. So weirdly enough, most concerts that were outdoors at that time took place during the day. So they would play in the afternoon, which is weird to think now. Like, you know, the concert would start at like 2 p.m. or something. And you would have like the whole show would happen. Yeah, I know, right? It would happen during the sunlight during the daytime. Which I don't know, maybe they didn't really know how to light stadiums at that time. I have no idea. But, you know, when you're talking about a football stadium, that takes a lot of lighting, I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, most of those shows were in the daytime. So the Stones shows in the stadiums were in the daytime and then they would play in arenas at night. But yeah, I just want to talk about it a little bit because it's a really cool tour. It's probably the last really great tour the Rolling Stones ever did as a band. But Steel Wheels was good, but this was probably the last like true Rolling Stones tour before they became like a novelty act, I would say. But yeah, but yeah, you can watch it on YouTube.
So in the 80s, they were like kind of falling off, but then they would come back pretty strong, I guess, later on when they became that novelty act.
Kind of, yeah. So basically after 81, they did a tour in 82, I believe, 82 or 83. But after that, they sort of broke up for a few years. And then around 1988 or 89, I remember this specifically because all of these because I considered all of these 60s bands that I listened to when I was a little kid broken up, right? But in 88 or 89, they kind of all started getting back together again for some reason. I mean, I'm sure that reason was they needed money. But the Who got back together and the Rolling Stones got back together and they did a huge stadium tour and everybody was all into that shit again. And then Pink Floyd got back together and like, you know, all these bands that we thought were broken up for 10 years were back together again. But yeah, they were kind of, but in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I'm sure people are seeing the Stones now thinking they're great, but it's just, to me, it's like a novelty act. It's not like, you know, it's not dangerous, hard rock and roll like it used to be. It's just like, let's go out there and play the songs and then collect our paycheck kind of thing. But, you know,
they're old now.
They are old, like these people in this.
Like this movie.
in this movie.
Maybe we could do a remake of this movie and just have everybody from the Rolling Stones in it.
And that would be fantastic. Strangely enough, though, the Rolling Stones, for the most part, are actually younger than the people in this movie still. Because all these actors were in their 80s. Like, all of these actors died. This is all their last movies.
Yeah.
Except John Houseman. Yeah. All of them, all three of the other guys besides John Houseman all died within like 2 years of when this was made. But yeah, Rolling Stones, 1981. Watch the movie. You can watch the show on YouTube's. You can watch us on YouTube's and then watch the Rolling Stones if you want to do that. And also, they released a live album called Still Life in '82, which was recorded on this tour. And this whole show you can stream on Apple Music too. I believe it's under the Hampton, Virginia, 1981. But yeah, I just thought I'd talk about the Stones for a minute because we don't get talked about them too much because they're a 70s band mostly. Yeah.
But hey, yeah, they're coming back. You know what I mean? Making a couple of comeback good tours in the 80s. But we will play Rolling Stones for you at the end for all of our podcast listeners. But
let's do it.
Let's move on to who booked this shit, brother. All right, so this one, Ghost Stories, was directed by one John Irvin. All right, or Irvine, whatever you want to call him. Apparently, he's like the English film director. That's probably why everything was made in New England. And apparently,
I see what you did there.
You like that, huh? Yes,
I like that. That was a good joke. He directed the TV BBC version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with the guy that played Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I like a lot.
There you go. I could dig that, brother. And then he also did The Dogs of War around this time, 1980. And then he also did Hamburger.
Is that Christopher Walken?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so, and Hamburger Hill. Yeah, that's a great movie.
So this is kind of like his own little like in the horror movies. You know what I mean? Like this is kind of like his intro into the horror movie realm. And of course, like we were saying earlier, like this had like an all-star cast of very prominent actors from the 70s and the 60s on here. Fred. We had Fred Astaire on here, which he's been named. No,
Fred Astaire. Yeah,
Astaire. That's my bad. I fucked that one up.
Yeah, most of these are actually way before the 70s, though. Like most of these guys were like, these guys are old as fuck. I mean, like they're very like some of these people were born in like 1901. Like these people are old as fuck. So yeah, Fred Astaire, they were all in their 80s at this point. Fred Astaire was born in 1899, by the way.
There you go.
Just so you know how old as fuck he was.
Yeah. They were doing around that time, man. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple on here that we have seen before on some of our reviews.
Yeah.
What's his name? I believe it was John Houseman. All right. And this John Houseman, the guy that played James, I thought I recognized him, but he was really known to, being a supporter of Orson Welles on Making Citizen Kane. So I thought that was pretty cool. And
he was also in The Fog.
Yeah.
He was in The Fog, remember? He was at the very beginning of The Fog.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe he was the one who was like, there ain't no fog out there.
Yeah. He was the guy that was telling the ghost story at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. The ghost story guy at the beginning. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it's weird because it's almost like these two roles are related. Like you could watch The Fog with him telling a ghost story, and then his character in this movie is based around telling ghost stories. And I just was waiting when I watched those two movies closer together, like we kind of did. I was kind of waiting on him to say, I told this ghost story about fog pirates once. And now I'm going to tell the story again.
I'm going to tell this one. Maybe that was one of his sessions at the Chowder Club.
Maybe. One thing about John Houseman I've never brought up before is I think John Houseman would have been a really good choice for Loomis in Halloween. If they didn't pick Donald Pleasance, Houseman would have been really, really good in that role.
Yeah, I can see that because he does have his voice is very interesting. And I just don't know if maybe they had him and Donald Pleasance at the same, what's it called? Acting room. they were saying, all right, who can say I got shot 5 times more dramatically?
And it was definitely Loomis or Donald Pleasance, I'm sure.
Yes, because
5 times.
I don't know if he would have said it a little differently. He would have been like 5 times, 5 times, 5. Because he had that slower.
Yeah, he's quieter.
Yeah, Loomis would just. Donald Pleasance would just freak out.
Right. Well, like that's the thing. Like we talked about this when we did Halloween. Like I think John Houseman would have done it more like you would expect the Loomis character to do it. Donald Pleasance acted crazier than Michael Myers in Halloween. Like he just he comes across crazier than Michael Myers is.
Yes. So there's a couple things. So obviously you said this film was based on a novel by Peter Straub. Mm-hmm. Have you ever read that book before?
I have not. I've read a bunch of Peter Straub books. I read Julia, which was also made into a movie called The Haunting of Julia. I read The Talisman, which he wrote with Stephen King. And I read the later one they did together. I think it's called Black House or something like that. But I've never read this. But I'm going to. I'm going to get a copy of it at a used bookstore or something to read it. Because I should have read this years ago, but it's one of those things I never got around to reading. But I've heard it's a very, very good version of the book.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it follows the source material pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Which I can imagine because with all the flashbacks, like that's it's the movie is written like a book is. Like, it's like now we're going to go back, 70 years and tell you this part of the story.
So apparently how it all started was Universal Pictures had purchased the rights to Peter Straub's novel Ghost Story in 1978 for about $225,000. English director John Irving was asked to direct the film by producer Bert Wissenbaum on the basis of his direction of Haunting the Ferryman, a British television film. So that's like the premise of it. Okay. Upon reading Straub's novel and Lawrence D. Cohen's screenplay, Irving envisioned the narrative as being about hypocrisy and principle means fears of women at some point of hatred. So he wanted the theme to be like men's fears of women. And like how they at some point they can turn into like hatred. All right.
Yeah.
So Irving, who was a newcomer in Hollywood, hired several British filmmakers as part of his team and stated that the film's cinematography was intended to be European, brother. Very European film. It kind of was in some parts of it. I can see that.
I agree. I guess see that. Yeah.
An appearance and to look like a Christmas card because of all the winter stuff. So principal photography took place in Saratoga Springs, New York. You ever been there before, Alison? Saratoga?
Nope. Never been there. But it takes place in Vermont, right?
Yeah, Vermont too. Yeah, Woodstock, Vermont as well. Yeah. And then we had interiors of the abandoned home in the film were crafted inside the former Union Station in Albany, New York. And then the shooting for the Florida-based scenes compiled in Dayland and New Smyrna Beach, Florida. That's when our boy Don and his flashbacks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, we had some principal photography taking place in Los Angeles. All right. So according to Irving, the filming process was emotionally turbulent for star Fred Astaire. All right. Astaire, who confided in Irving that he felt he was going to die or be murdered while shooting the film. Imagine that.
That's weird. Why did he think that?
I don't know. And yeah, one point,
like die. Okay, I can understand because the man was born in 1899.
Yeah,
he could drop dead at any moment. But I mean, I'm just saying that why would he think he was going to get murdered?
Maybe he had a hit out of him. You know what I mean?
Maybe he was messing with the mob, like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, be careful with that shit. So I found this is interesting too. The film's special makeup effects were designed by makeup artist Dick Smith. All right.
Dick Smith. We've talked about Dick Smith before.
Yeah, we've done his stuff on here. So Smith and his team of artists created multiple life-size puppets of Eva Alma in different stages of decay. I was calling it the mud zombie throughout the whole film because that's what it looked like to me, a mud zombie.
Yeah.
So Smith also created faceless dummies with a gaping mouth and no eyes that was to be used as an apparition of Eva. Okay, but it ultimately was not included in the final film. But the eyeless apparition design was later utilized in a hallucination sequence in the 1999 film House on Haunted Hill.
Wow. So they used this effect 20 years later in a movie.
Yes. And then they credited Smith for the credit design. So he didn't get to use that design in this film, but 20 years later in this movie, they're like, you know what? What about that Dick Smith guy? He has some cool apparatus shit we can use. Put that in there. So I thought that was kind of interesting how you can, because we've seen that before in movies. You can reuse, you can reuse effects, and you can reuse, props and stuff for like different films. So it's kind of cool that they would hold on to that and use it for this one.
Yeah. One thing too, I was going to say before you move on about that, how they reuse things for movies. So like in 2022, I was in Hollywood for a few days, and I did a studio tour, right? I think I did the Paramount tour. No, it wasn't the Paramount, Warner Brothers tour. And I got to visit the film lot where they shoot movies at. Like, they have a lot that looks like it's outside, but it looks like city streets and things like that. And it's ruined a lot of movies that I've watched, especially movies made in the 80s. Because when I see it, I realize that it was filmed on that studio lot and not a real street. I think it's weird. It's like I look at movies completely different now than I did then, which I think is really odd.
Yeah. I look at movies different now too, because most of the movies have been like upgraded to HD and 4K. I'm like, wow, all that shit's going.
Oh, God.
See, like a little bit more detail and everything.
Yeah, we saw that a lot last week. So, we can see all the flaws and shit now. Although this movie had practical effects, and you know what? It looked fucking good.
So like you were saying before, this film was the last feature film for about 3 veterans of the acting game: Melvin Douglas, Fred Astaire, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. They were all this last film on this one. So, a couple things.
No, I was going to say that Melvin Douglas was also in The Changeling, but I think The Changeling was filmed before this movie.
Yes, The Changeling was filmed before this one. Hint, hint, that might be coming up in the pipeline.
Yeah, it might be. Maybe real soon.
We'll see. All right, so a couple things kind of fun about this stuff. So both Fred Astaire's character Ricky and Melvin Douglas' character John Jeffrey are mentioned in Peter Strauss' source ghost story novel on which the movie is based. So you know how a lot of times have books or different source material, they'll have the same kind of story, but they'll change like the characters, sometimes names. So those 2 characters were in the actual source material. All right. This is a really interesting story and kind of sad, but like very interesting. It kind of reminds me of like one of those like haunted films that you hear about, like when like after the film, like there's like tragedy that happens to like different actors and people who were on the film. So of the 4 actors who played the young versions of the veteran men, so they played like the young Chowder Society members, 3 died before reaching the age of 60. All right.
Wow.
We had Kurt Johnson, who played young Edward, died of AIDS on February 12th, 1986 at the age of 33. We had Tim Chockett. He played young Ricky Hawthorne, was killed in a motorcycle accident on September 24, 2004 at the age of 49. And Mark Chamberlain was killed in a bicycle accident March 22nd, 2011 at the age of 55. So basically it has of 2023 when this article was written, Kim Olan is the only surviving member of the group. So out of all those young Chowder members, to this day, the only one that's still living is the Ken Olin one. So pretty crazy story.
That's crazy.
And most of them were just like freak accidents. You know what I mean? So very, very interesting when it comes to that. So we have a couple of these things. Let's see. So Peter Strauss' lengthy and extremely complex novel presents a number of obvious problems to anyone wishing to adapt it. All right. And it was widely agreed that his film version had failed the books in many ways. One of those. So
yeah, one of those.
Admirers means book critics. all right, of the original were very critical of the various aberrations, extensive and complex changes made to the original. It was an expensive box office failure. Oh, I'm not sure about that one. Both director John River and leading lady, because this film, I mean, it was about, so for the whole 1981, it came in 33rd place of highest grossing films. Yeah. But in the horror genre, 1981, this is actually the third highest grossing horror movie of 1981.
Yeah, the top grossing horror movie of 1981 was An American Werewolf in London.
Yes.
Which makes sense. And I'm pretty sure number 2 is Friday the 13th Part 2, but I could be wrong.
In 1981? Yes. Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could look it up. So both director John River and leading lady Alice Cringe claimed that the film had been extremely re-edited by the studio. And it was even said that this re-editing had tried to emphasize the young characters in the story rather than the old men who are at the heart of the plot. So a couple.
That's really
pissed
strange.
Hey, bro.
I mean, from my understanding, it's a good version of the book, but I mean, it's not going to be perfect. I find that really strange that she would say that, though, because the younger versions of them are in a very small part of the movie.
Very small part, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's mostly the old men.
Yeah, throughout the whole.
But yeah,
maybe she didn't watch the film.
Maybe she didn't actually watch it. She just read the book and then complained.
Yeah.
Book nerds.
Let's see.
Of which I am one.
Here. Okay, so you'll like this one, Alison. Author Peter, what's his name? Peter Straub?
Peter Straub. Straub, I think is how you say it, but I'll say it, Peter. Yeah.
Was unhappy with the final results, of course. He sounds like George R. R. Martin. All right, mainly due
of course he was.
All right. Mainly due to my many important characters, such as the Crowder Society's 5th member, Louis Benedict, and teenager Pete Barnes were dropped from the story. It would not allow any further film adaptations of his books. Though in the years that follow, he has softened up on it. While he maintained he's still disappointed, he has praised the film's cast, music, and atmosphere, and is grateful the film encouraged many people to seek out the book. So it looks like
Which, I mean,
Yeah.
It did well for him, I think.
How many characters are in this fucking book, man? Because there was a shit ton of characters to follow in this film. And he wanted more characters? Jesus. All right. Was it?
Well, I mean, there's really only
2 hours. Was it?
It was an hour and 48 minutes, and I was worried that after the last week's movie that you might have thought this movie was too long. But I think this movie is the perfect length. I don't know what you would have cut out. I am interested to hear as we go along what you would have edited out of this to make it shorter. As you were saying with Lady in White, there's a lot of things like the teacher limbo dancing and stuff like that we could have edited out of that. I'm kind of interested as we go to see what you would have edited out of this as a filmmaker. I'm always interested in that.
I'll tell you a couple scenes that I thought we could have maybe shaved off a little bit. All right, so and most of them involve Ricky. No offense, my boy.
Okay. Well.
So we have screenwriter Lawrence D. Cohen found that the nearly 500-page novel made it quite difficult to adapt it to a 2-hour film. Gee, I wonder why. So he actually, you like this one, Alison. He actually suggested to Universal executives that it would be better as a miniseries like Salem's Lot. Which it could have been, yeah.
I agree. I always agree with that. I mean, anytime you have more time, it's going to be better, right?
I mean, if this was to be made today, it probably would have been a miniseries, like something off like Netflix or like Hulu that would have made it into like maybe a 3 or 4-parter. I could see that. Mm-hmm. You could actually, because you can expand the stories and then you can actually add on more characters. Unlike this movie where there were so many characters, it was kind of hard to follow them all. Mm-hmm. So we had after has likewise been decided it would work as a film, but they refused on the grounds that they had paid for a movie. And they would get a movie. On a related note, author Peter Straub has criticized the novel Salem's Lot has an influence on the book. So even Peter said like Salem's Lot was a big influence on his. Well, it makes sense because they were really friends with Stephen King. So, all right, let's see. There's a lot of stuff about this film. Apparently, horror author Stephen King once described Peter Straub's Source ghost story book as being probably the best of the supernatural novels since The Others, The Exorcist, and Rosemary Baby.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
Got a couple shout outs. There's a lot about here. Let's see what the fans are saying, and then we'll go on to the film. Because I was like bringing up this part. Well, that's a long review. Okay. Basically, this one says, I'm not going to read the whole thing because we'll be on here for hours. Yeah. But on IMBD, a fan says at the end, overall, Ghost Stories is a no less a well-made film with a classic ghastly edge to it. It is a slow film in many ways, but the subtlety employed, her combined with the bleak and New England winterland really made this an enjoyable experience. There are so many phenomenal gothic images throughout. The story itself has a certain timeless to it, and in spite of the film's more dated qualities, memorable and atmospheric for a variety of reasons. So basically, this person's saying they really like the atmosphere of the movie and the way it was shot, which I can see that. I did like when the Chowder Society was in their red ghost reading room. That was cool. And they're all sipping on brandy.
Yeah. I think that shit is all cool. Like I that's one of the things I love about this movie. And I've talked about this many times. Like we need to start some kind of society.
Oh, there you go.
We call it something cooler than the Chowder Society, maybe. But I just think it's cool because their whole thing is like they're a society that tells ghost stories, and I think that shit's just fucking cool. Yeah. And they meet in their little red room where they tell ghost stories, and then his wife yells at all of them.
Well, that was a big thing back in the day, talk about stories. I mean, that wasn't how Frankenstein was basically built,
that was how. Yeah. So Frankenstein. Yeah, my understanding. Well, that was way before this, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, wasn't Frankenstein written because
they would have
Mary Shelley and yeah, and they would just meet.
Club. Yeah.
Yeah, and her husband or her boyfriend, husband, whatever. And Lord Byron was one of those that was in that. And anyway, they were telling ghost stories or horror stories, and Frankenstein is the story that she told. Yes.
Yeah. So, but everybody, I say we get into the full review of some old timers telling us some ghost stories and being crazy when they're younger. Let's get into 1981's Ghost Story.
Let's do it.
I will take you places where you have never been.
It's the start.
I will show you things that you have never seen.
Beginning.
And I will see the life run out of you.
Long ago, on a cold, dark night, in this peaceful New England village, something happened. Something too terrifying to remember. Something too frightening to forget. Something that has remained a secret until now.
Is anyone else seeing things? Am I the only one having nightmares?
Universal Pictures presents Fred Astaire, Melvin Douglas, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., John Houseman, Ghost Story, from the terrifying best-selling novel by Peter Straub.
Who is this?
He's found a picture of her. That's not possible.
The girl, the men, the evil, the silence.
Dad, I'm telling you, something happened. I'm telling you, I think he may have been murdered.
The house, the fear, the nightmares, the vengeance, the terror, the truth.
Not now, Rick. Yes. Now. Something's happening. Something terrible. I fear that more of us are going to die. No, we must talk about it.
She is not the person you think she is. Who are you?
Oh, no, please, let's not stop.
She's worried you have the wrong idea about her. Everything about her is wrong.
No, please let me talk about it.
Get away from her, Dave.
What are you?
She's dangerous.
Listen to me, please.
Soon they will learn that they have never been forgiven. ghost story. The time has come to tell the tale.
So we start off with some old men drinking. All right, which could be a dangerous.
That's going to be us one day.
I know.
It's going to be us one day. We're going to be old men drinking.
Yeah, old man drinking in suits. We should wear some suits on here. You know what I mean? Some suits. Get some brandy cigars in the background.
We should. They're wearing. Aren't they wearing like tuxedos? Or maybe they're not wearing tuxedos, but they're wearing like bow ties.
Yeah, bow ties.
And then one of them makes a comment that one day, young men are only going to wear suits and ties on special occasions.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, I don't even own a tie. I don't even own a tie. I don't. Little did he know.
Little did he know. All right. And so there's like a couple of themes in this movie if you all want to drink with us. If I say old men dreaming, then, I mean, you might as well just start drinking and you'll probably be.
You say dreaming?
Old men dreaming. Like nightmare dreaming.
Okay, so. Oh, yeah, nightmare dream. There's also, well, I wasn't sure if you said old men drinking because they drink a lot in this too.
Well, they do drink a lot.
But they dream and drink. Yeah.
They're dreaming and drinking. All right.
Yeah, that's what happens when you murder somebody. Spoilers.
So, when Ricky keeps having the same dream about her having no pulse. No pulse. Having bad dreams. We have another old guy dreaming bad. We have the intro. Then we get into the intro. All right. And now we have all the men in their red light bourbon study. All right.
Which they light with candles.
They light with red candles. All right. And one of them is telling a joke saying like, oh, we're not sure if he was human. So he's telling their story, right? And the story is basically about the graveyard person hears a sound, an also slightly sounds in the graveyard, and he goes by the grave, and he saw that the cross was on the floor, and that the soil was upset. Have you ever had upset soil, Alison?
No, the soil's pretty set where I live, so right, I'm good. But when you bury somebody alive, the soil gets upset, though.
Exactly. All right. So the graveyard couldn't figure out what it was, so he left, but he kept hearing this faint sound, and the faint sound was somebody being buried alive.
Yeah. Which this was a kind of cool scene, like how they showed the dead body in the casket, but the top of it's glass, so you can see down in there. So I'm not sure if the casket was supposed to be glass, but it was just a cool effect how he's like scratching on it. It looked awesome.
So after that, telling this story, everybody's all like, into it and everything, and they all have some more brandies. All right, this is when they got that guy complaining about the ties, and then they toast to the Chowder Society. All right, so now we cut to a scene with a bathtub overflowing, and this is when we meet our character David. Okay. Apparently, David and Don were played by the same guy on here.
Okay, so apparently they were, yes. Because I wasn't sure about that until after the movie. But they looked awful. They looked a lot alike, but not exactly alike. And I thought that was really interesting how they did that.
Yeah, they're played by a guy, Craig Wasson. But
they're not.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, but they're not. Portrayed as twins. They're just brothers.
Yeah.
And they made him look just enough different that they look like different people, but they were played by the same actor. Which, if that's not a cost-cutting thing, or they just couldn't find someone that looked enough like him, is the only thing I could think of. But wasn't he also in Nightmare on Elm Street 3?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the fun one, Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Yeah. Dream Warriors.
Warriors one. Classic. One of the Retro Blood's first podcast. Check it out, everybody.
That was back in the day when we sounded like shit, though. That was great.
Well, the recording is.
I sounded like I was.
We sound great.
It is. Yeah, the songs are good. I mean, the shows are good, but I sounded like I was on the phone from fucking China or something during those ones.
Hey, man. It's old school, brother.
You got to start somewhere, right?
You got to start somewhere.
Now we're on video on the YouTubes.
I know. We're growing up fast, man. Just think next, and we're going to be some AI guys on. We don't have to be on here anymore after a while. We'll just be some AI and we're safe.
Yeah, we're just going to have AI chat GPT do our show for us, and we'll just sit and rake in the money.
I don't know if we do have that. Like if I had like AI and chat GPT, I wonder if they would screw up the names like me still. Because like, you know, if they got the names right, everybody would know this is if my AI self got all the names right, everybody would know our show is fake then.
Yeah, I know. You know, they with the kayfabe, but the thing is, like, everything that I ever get from AI chat GPT is always wrong. So the fact that we're putting this much faith in AI is terrifying to me. But anyway, I feel like I'm an old man screaming to the clouds. Let's go.
Speaking of terrifying,
nobody's wearing ties anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No ties anymore. What's going on here? So speaking of terrifying, David's like, What are you? What are you doing in my bed? It's like some naked chick. Which doesn't make sense later because, like, we know he knows.
It doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, I was going to ask you this because I don't understand this part of the movie. But anyway, it's good to see you didn't understand it either. So, okay.
So he turns this chick over. And now, well, the only thing I'm guessing is, like, we'll find out later that David does know who this ghostly figure is, even though he was like, who are you? I think he should have been like, what are you? Like, what are you? Would have been better than who are you? Mm-hmm. All right. But like, basically, he turns her over. She turns into some sort of half mummified zombie. He freaks out and he falls out the fucking window naked.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
that was fantastic.
The falling scenes in 1980s movies are always hilarious to me because it's like they're like falling into like eternity, and like they're like it's like the same frame, like the frame of the person would be like this, and it just gets smaller. You know, it's just
yeah. Fun. So they did this through blue screen though, right?
Yeah, like
they filmed a camera falling, I guess somehow. However, they did that then, and then they told him to stand naked against a blue screen, I guess. Yeah. And then they just shot him and he just waved his arms around and then they just inserted it in the thing, right? I guess is how they did that.
Yeah, I like when he falls to the window, he falls to the pool and you can see his like body like smack.
Yeah.
Like it cuts
awesome.
Like it cuts just like him just like being dropped for like a second. I'm pretty sure he would have smacked a lot harder if he fell from that story onto the concrete.
Oh, yeah, he would have been like mush. There would no way.
Like there's no way he would have landed on that concrete like just like because it looked like he just landed on that. It looks like they got him on like a gurney and just like dropped him. Mm-hmm. If he fell from like the stories like that, he'd be like something would explode. Okay. Or
he would have exploded. He would have basically just it would just been liquid all over the place. Yeah.
And one of the big things he did say when he touched her, she's cold, which does come up later.
Mm-hmm.
So now I like my notes here. Now we get the naked guy's brother coming down from New York, which we're going to find out his name is Don, short for Donald, I believe.
Yeah.
And the big thing about this one is the, obviously Don, he's going to go visit his dad, which his dad is the mayor, which his dad is part of the Chowder Society. And I believe his dad was Edward. Okay. Played by Douglas Fairbanks Jr. And this whole part basically is they're like the dad and Don don't really get along too well. I guess like Don doesn't really get too well he didn't get along too well with his brother or his dad. And then Don believes that this was not an accident of David falling out the window like the cop says it was. He thinks he got murdered, but the dad doesn't want to hear it. All right.
Right, because it's really unlikely that you're going to fall out of a window that's closed.
Yeah.
Right, that doesn't make sense, right?
They might have thought it was suicide or something.
Well, I guess maybe, but I guess so. Okay, fine.
So he also.
But when you open the, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I'm lingering on this. When you just open the window.
No, if you're doing, you want to make it for effect. You want to make sure that They're gonna have to replace that window if I'm dying, brother. Okay.
I guess so. I don't know. You jump through a plate glass window and tell me how easy it is. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, apparently this
Continue.
He didn't even like. He just fell. He just fell backwards.
It's like the cheapest glass I've ever seen.
It wasn't real glass, brother. Okay.
No.
All right.
It's like wrestling glass.
Yeah, that New England glass man. They got a gimmick.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So he also says, like, hey, I knew the girl that David was marrying because I slept with her. The dad was pissed off. He's like, what the hell? You got to straighten out, Don. All right. So now they're coming back from the funeral. And then this is when Edward's having a bunch of dreams, bad dreams. So everybody take your first shot. We have some old man. We have our second round of old man bound dreams. All right. Don wakes him up, asks like, hey, we could probably go fishing. So we could, try to get our, because the brother and the son died. So obviously they're both upset. So now they kind of want to mend fences and get back on track and get it back to a normal life. So now we have Ricky. He's having more bad dreams. This is also another recurring thing in this movie. Ricky having bad dreams and his wife waking him up. I mean, you asked me some stuff they could have cut out of this movie to make it shorter. All Ricky interaction with his wife, I felt like that was like half the movie. Okay.
Well, so that I see what you're saying, but one of the things though, the dreams and Ricky interacting with his wife was he tells her later on in the movie, remember she says, she's like, we've been married for 40 years. I don't know anything about you. So this is her trying to take care of Ricky because she doesn't know what happened. She doesn't know that they killed her, but I feel like all these scenes help build the connection of her like trying to take care of Ricky because she's like trying to protect him from the other members of the group and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I do like this part though. She's like, "Oh, you got more bad dreams?" He's like, what do you and those old fools talk about?" And Ricky deadpans like, "Black magic."
That was fucking cool. That should be the beginning of like a death metal album too. Where he's like, "What are you all into?" And then he's like, "Black magic." And yeah.
That's a good. Yeah, that'd be a good track, a beginning track to add in.
Yeah.
All right, so now he's having more nightmares, wedding nightmares and stuff with David. We can see David because remember David got married to this lady that we'll find out pretty soon, and then of course the whole Chowder clan is in the nightmares as well too. And then we see this Don's trying to wake up the dad again. So now Edward, the dad, goes out walking in the snow like an old crazy man. All right.
You don't go walking out in the snow?
Well, I do, but if I do it, I want to be like an old crazy man. If I do.
Well, that's how I do it. Yeah. But it doesn't snow that often where we live. It's like a every other year kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah. And it's not that
with them.
Yeah.
Right. But with them, if you live in like upstate New York or Vermont or somewhere, if you don't walk out in the snow, you just don't go outside in the wintertime.
Exactly. You don't want to do it. Yeah.
So, it's just part of their lives.
And he's been living out here so long, he can only be in his pajamas. He doesn't get cold at all.
Exactly.
All right. So he's walking in the snow. He passes by the postman. He's like, "You okay, mayor?" Because Edward's the mayor at this time.
Yeah.
So Edward thinks he's seeing David, so he tries to follow him. So now he's on this bridge, which is never good. The truck driver sees him. Nope. And then this is when we have the ghost lady that's haunting our movie, does her zombie form. And this is when Edward falls on the ice and he dies. The truck driver sees it, says, "Oh shit." And then the ghost lady laughs. So now we're back with the Cheddar Society. All right. And they're kind of arguing about Edwards and, about what happened. And they're basically saying that they're trying to convince themselves that they're not being haunted. They're trying to convince themselves that Edward was just disturbed because his son died. So probably that's why. And then they asked James, I think James might be my favorite old guy in this film because all his lines was like, "Oh God, I'm too old for this." You want me to write a thing for the mayor? Oh. And you know what he sounded like? Okay.
Ooh.
This is going to 90s me. Okay.
Okay.
There's a scene on the X-Files, one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
The 90s, where he had like the smoking men and all his like cronies, like all these government cronies and stuff. And the smoking man would be like, they would say something like, "Hey, you got to fix this, cover it up." And smoking man's like, "I'm doing it. All right, don't question me. I'm too old for you to question me." This is how my boy James in this movie was. He was the guy denying everything. Okay, deny. And he's like, "I'm too old to do all this stuff, but y'all have to listen to me because I'm old." It's like, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, well, he plays that role really well, right? He plays the I'm an old man, I know what I'm talking about role really well.
I'll deny it. I'll think it is something else. You might say it's ghostly apparitions. It's not. Okay. So they also ask him to write something for the mayor. Okay.
Also, Seer James, the guy you're talking about, he's trying to basically protect. Like, I get the feeling, they don't mention this, but I get the feeling that he's the one that's kept them safe from prosecution or whatever for all these years. Because he's like he won't even talk about it.
Yeah.
Until near the end of the movie, he won't even say her name. So he's the one that's like, okay, we're going to wrap this up and we're never going to talk about this shit again. And, we're going to and I have a feeling also that they started the society so he can keep them all controlled. You know what I mean? Like, so none of them go rogue and like start talking about shit they shouldn't be talking about.
Yeah.
And he's done that for 50, 80 years or however long it's been. That's 30s to the 80 to 79. So it's been 50 years. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then, of course, we have some of the older members, basically are in denial about Edward dying. So we have Don's going through some old photos, like we like to do. Goes through an old photo, sees the whole Chowder Society when they're younger, and sees the photo with this girl's face blurred out. And he's kind of like, what is this one all about? So now we have two members.
But we find out.
Well, we will find out. Trust me. All right. And then we have these two older Cheddar Society guys talking about their bad dreams. So then we have this old guy. Let me see which one this was on here. We have John. Okay, Dr. John going into this old house. And I believe this old house was the house that I think Ava lived at or something, which we'll find out. But the guy knew about this old house. And while he was in this house, he finds two squatters, a young boy, and a guy named Gregory.
Not Ava. No, it is Ava. Sorry, I get them confused. She's Ava in the past and Alma now. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we'll find out the ghostly lady. Her name is Ava in the past, and then it's Alma coming up pretty soon. So she she has two different ghost gimmick names. All right?
Yeah.
You don't got a ghost gimmick name there, Alison?
My ghost gimmick name is Scoopy Poo.
There you go. I like it. So now they're talking to this Gregory guy. And this guy reminds me of it's like that, like you talk in riddles type of deal. You know what I mean? Like
Gregory, right?
Yeah, the Gregory guy. Basically, the Gregory.
I have a feel. Yeah.
Well, his story basically was he was out of the mental hospital, and he's basically being the guy, the Almas promised him a bunch of stuff like immortality and everything, and he believes it all. And now he talks in these riddles of the world's ending and you will never see this. This is gonna be the most pain you'll ever see and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like this is is some of the weakest parts of the movie. Like, I feel like, so don't they mention that he was part of some occult group in California?
Yeah, the occult group. Yeah.
but then they don't really tell us anything else about that. I have a feeling this is part of what Peter Straub was talking about when he wanted more characters. Yeah. Like, I think I have a feeling in the book, this is probably fleshed out more and we would understand this part a little better. But they just casually mentioned that he's part of an occult group and he's escaped from a mental asylum. And then he's just he'll just show up at random times in the movie to tell us things.
Yeah, I mean, basically his character was, because I think they could have made that, like I said, a little bit more, defined. Because, when John goes researching about Gregory after he's done talking to him at the mansion, that's when they find out that he was an escaped mental patient. He had a occult group, like you're saying. And then now he's just at this house squatting. And we find out in the story that Eva is using him because she promised him everlasting life, I guess. But I think this would have been cooler. Like, I think the storyline would have been cooler if, like, this Gregory's cult was kind of like that cult in, like, Castlevania 3, where they resurrected Dracula. You know what I mean? By, like, killing a young virgin.
Yeah. Right.
That would have been cooler.
I love how you
being in a cult.
Exactly. I love how you bring everything back to Castlevania.
You have to, man.
Like, that's your, like, touchstone for everything. I think it's awesome.
Yes. Everything would be better with more Castlevania storylines on it. All right.
I've never played a Castlevania game ever.
Some of them are hard. I would recommend Cynthia the Night. That's my favorite, which probably is a bunch of people's favorites out there. So they say, basically they're just going on saying they know their owner and everything. And then, like I said, John goes by the police station, and that's how they find out this guy is Gregory from the mental hospital, like we were saying. So they also ruled that Edward's death was a suicide. Of course, Don and all them don't believe all that. And now the Chester Society has called a meeting. Okay. So now Ricky wants to meet with Don. Okay. And Ricky now is like, hey, I think we're all in danger because we've had your brother dying, we had Edward dying, and they're kind of tied to this thing that I can't tell you right now. And then Don's like, okay, well, how about you tell me about this picture with all of you on this chick? And then it just doesn't go anywhere. We cut the scene. Very interesting. So now we have a cop going into the house looking for Greg, but Gregory is not there. Gregory is now at Don's place. Okay. And Greg pops in. He's being creepy. He talks about his brother's death and dad's death. And then Don's like, well, how do you know me and stuff? And he was like, my name is Gregory Bates, but I've gone by many other names. Oh, yeah, like what? Creeper?
He doesn't tell us.
I was like, so they're doing the lines that I preferred more on Hellraiser, to be honest with you. Because he's telling us, and Ava does tell us this later too, it's like, you can't imagine the terror I'm going to show you. You can't imagine all the frightening stuff I'm going to show you. All right. Now, when the Cenobites say that shit, they're all like in this like gothic S&M leather with some like shit coming out of them. I can believe I'm going to see some terror. When this Gregory's like, I'm going to show you terror, I'm just like, whatever, bro. I'm going to beat your ass before you even like.
He just looks like a homeless. He just looks like a homeless man. Yeah, basically,
homeless guy is just spewing bullshit. Okay,
and he's there with like a dirty little kid.
Yeah, and then the kid scares him for a second, and then Gregory gives Don the necklace. Now Don pretty much knows what's going on now because he recognizes this ghost necklace. So now we're back with the Cheddar Society. How come they're the Cheddar Society, Alison, but we don't see any of them eat?
Chowder Society. The Chowder Society, not Cheddar Society.
Whatever. Well, maybe it's chowder. Can you put cheddar cheese in chowder?
Yeah.
There you go.
No, you probably shouldn't, but you can.
Okay.
Actually, that might be pretty good. Like New England clam chowder with cheddar cheese on top. That might be good.
Pretty good. So the Cheddar Cheese Society, they have 3 members left. They're drinking bourbon, which I like. Hey, you gotta have a good. Bourbon is like actually one of the only liquors I can drink that I don't need to have like a mixer with it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. You shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, you should be able to drink bourbon with no mixer.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, when I thought about it, I was like, man, you don't really make mixed drinks with bourbon, but yeah, you do. There are bourbon mixed drinks, but I mean, Yeah, but I mean, but yeah, I mean,
do you prefer it on the ice or raw?
yeah. Well, no, I just drink my bourbon neat with no ice.
Yeah, neat. That's what it was.
Mm.
So now Ricky is bringing up to John that Don found the picture. Of course, my boy James is like, I'm denying everything. I'm too old.
Yeah,
that's like literally like he
I'm
doesn't.
too old.
He doesn't necessarily say that line word to word, but whatever he says, it's going to be in that category. I'm too old.
Yeah,
And I'm
well, right.
everything.
Right, because he's kept them. He's been doing this shit for 50 years, so he's tired. Yeah. He's tired of protecting these morons who are determined to give themselves up.
Yeah. So they fear that more of them are going to die. Don comes in. The lady's like, he just came in. He's like, don't worry about it. He says, and then he says, everybody, you're all right. More of you are going to die. And he's like, I want to buy my way into the Chowder Society. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what did you bring us? Did you bring me some specialty made chowder from home or something?
That would be amazing. I made you warm chowder.
I got you some warm chowder with crackers. And he's like, no, check this out. I know how to buy my way in. I'm going to tell you a ghost story. That's how you buy your way in, right?
Well, yeah. So he says, I want to buy my way into this Chowder Society. And they say, you can't buy your way in. He's like, I can buy my way in with a story. That's the price of admission, right? Or the price of membership, right? So then they're like, okay, sit down and tell us your story.
What if
and then we get a flashback. Then he's not in the society. He just gets kicked out. But he knows they're going to like this one because it brings back all the shit that they did 50 years ago.
Yes. Interesting. So then we get his story. Oh boy, here we go. Remember, this is 2 hours, everybody, so we have a lot of time. All right, so he tells the story about him being a teacher in Orlando. Okay, he was teaching like American literature.
At college.
He said he was kind of seeing somebody until he met this new reception lady, Alma. Okay, and of course, his American literature, he was teaching all about seducing and seduction. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Dawn's now sees the British lady. And did you notice, like, every time that we saw, like, Alma or Eve, like, they did like that old school, like, film where, like, her face would be very shiny?
I did notice that. I thought that was really weird at first.
To me, I thought that was just like, they're trying to make this like a little old timer film. So like a lot of the old timer films, when the ladies would speak, they would have like the really shiny, glossy face, and then they didn't do too many close ups of her face, but they did have the shiny, glossy face going on.
Well, that's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to they used all those like 20s and 30s and 40s actors, and they were trying to make it look like a movie from the time.
Yeah,
kind of.
So now Dawn basically asked her to go to dinner. All right, I put Dawn has dinner with British lady. And in my notes, I say they eat sexual chocolate.
Yeah. Just then they do the sex.
And then they run in the rain. I mean, that's all you got to do, brother. You got to invite a British lady out, feed her some sexual chocolate, and then run in the rain, and you're guaranteed to get some pussy that night.
Yep. It's the rain that seals it for you. Trust me.
True. So they dry off. She now has a creepy toy musical box. All right. Kind of remind me of Amityville 4. Maybe she had a ghost light somewhere.
Maybe.
So then
ghost light.
So then she said she's she likes her toy box, but it scares her a little bit. And then Don asks if he could stay. She says yes, and they start kissing. And then they have some 1981 rough ghost sex. So you have sex with a ghost. It.
Well, she's physical at that point, right? You can touch her.
How? She's already been dead for like 50 years.
Well, at this point, she doesn't feel cold. Like, I don't know. It's good. I don't know how this shit works, but at this point, she doesn't feel cold yet when he's touching her.
You never had 50-year-old ghost lady ghost sex?
No. No, it's something I'm looking forward to in life, but I haven't had ghost sex yet.
I need to know more about this ghost sex. Like, I mean, like, did you feel everything? Like, if you're a
Probably.
ghost, okay, well, it's weird though, because when she was a ghost, later on, he throws something at her and it goes right through her. So how come his magic New England cock didn't not go? Why come that didn't not go for her?
Because she's solid sometimes. That's not the weirdest thing about this. Like, so we're led to believe that this ghost, Alma, is targeting him and his brother ultimately, but for revenge on their dad, right?
Mm-hmm. I guess.
But to do this, she also got a job.
Yeah.
Like why bother? Like what she applied for a job and got the job so that he would show up there. Like why didn't she just meet him at a bar or something?
Well, because
you know what I mean? Like,
because our boy at the time was a really good teacher. So all he did was the studies. He didn't go to no bar. He didn't start being wild until he met Alma over here. Okay.
Maybe. Okay.
So the next morning they kiss everything. He wants to know more about her. She says she's old fashioned, whatever the hell that means.
I mean, she's fucking old because she died in the 30s.
Does old fashioned mean that I picked you up on the first date and fucked you? That's old fashioned, brother. All right. So asked where she is from. She wants to know about him. He said he grew up in New England. He said it's boring there and she wants to go there. So now the Alma, she wants some sex in the college girls' bathroom.
Yeah. No, that was awesome.
And there's like an old lady trying to get in. Then they go out to eat. She puts his hand near her pussy while the waiter looks on. They are now in a tub, and then they're talking in this tub and everything about like he's like, hey, who else have you had before me? And she's like, well, there was this other guy. And then he's like all like now I thought at first he was like being like one of those like asshole guys. He's like, well, I can only be the only one now and forever. It's like, fucking, I met the guy before I even met you, asshole. Like, what? All right. And then she puts her head underwater and then she's like screams at him kind of weirdly. And he's like thinking like, oh, right. So this girl might be a little crazy, but well, I still like her.
She's still hot. Yeah.
So now she's watching him while she sleeps. And he's like, oh, this is another weird sign. All right. She's naked most of the time.
Well,
which I can.
So she's not just watching him. She's like just standing there blankly staring at him with huge wide eyes.
Yes.
It was a little bit terrifying. And he wakes up and says, what's wrong?
So now he's like, hey, let's go to the ocean. And she's like, well, I want to go to your hometown. He's like, oh, you don't want to go there. She's like,
boring, he says.
She's like, I want to get married. I want to meet your family. I want to see your father, your brother, and all your friends. I want to see all of them. Because remember, she's trying to do some revenge.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And she's like, I want to get married in the same area you were born in with all your friends and family watching. All right. And then, of course, Dawn sleeps again, wakes up, doesn't see her. They're out there by the ocean now. He walks up to her naked. And then she tells him, which I don't know how I'd feel if a naked girl told me this. She says, I'm going to show you things that's going to have the life run out of you. And I wouldn't know to be turned on or to be scared if I heard that line.
Well, I mean, I've met your lady, and that sounds like something she would say, to be honest with you.
Yes. She says, I'm naked and I will show you things to see the life run out of you. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Mm.
But our boy Don, he was confused, but he was digging it.
Because I've seen like some of the looks she's given you over the years, and I'm pretty sure I thought the life was going to run out of you some of those days.
That's true. Maybe she's a ghost and I don't know it. I don't know.
Maybe.
So we have more rain, of course. All right. Then they pull up to the house. And then she's like, remember when we first met in the rain? All right. And then now Dawn's going to tell her, like, you know what? I brought you out to the ocean. I haven't been working that well. And you've been saying some weird things. I don't want to get married to your crazy ass anymore. All right. And then she's like, you're not sorry. You don't know anything. All right. All right. And then she leaves. He leaves then. The music box goes off. And then we see the necklace on the floor. Uh-oh. Mm-hmm. So now Don, because he left his ghost British lady, he's having ghost British lady dreams now. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he goes to try to visit her. Now he's trying to go visit her at the school and the house. And the dean saying that he's disappointed in Don because Don used to be so prominent, but now he barely even shows up or does any of his work because he's hooked on that ghost light pussy, brother. All right.
He's depressed.
He's depressed now. He goes to her place. She's all gone. And then we get Don randomly calling David at a bar phone. All right, maybe he didn't have like a phone at his house or anything. So
that is weird, right? Like he goes to a bar to call his brother. Yeah. Long distance on a payphone. How much the fuck did that cost?
I know. Why don't we just call from your house or something? Okay. So now Don calls David. They both got news. All right. Mm-hmm. David said a month ago he ran into a girl that was calling out his name. All right. And then they got serious a little bit. And Don was like, "Who is this girl?" And then David was saying, "Listen, man, you have the wrong idea of her." All right. She said and then like Don's like, "Listen, man, there's something terribly wrong with that Alma girl. Every time I touched her, she was cold and there's like nothing there. So she's very dangerous." All right. And of course, David's like, "Oh, she's not dangerous at all." All right. And David's like, "You just resent me and stuff." All right. And then David says, like, "No, like, I don't resent you, but like that girl is dangerous." All right.
Yeah.
So then that's when he brings it back to the Chester Society and tell him like he tried to, he basically this is the part really doesn't make kind of sense to me, but maybe I'm just missing it over here. So at the beginning, David, like, to the Alma girl, is like, "Oh, who are you? What are you?" and stuff. Feels her she's cold, and then he turns her around. It's a demon face. But they also said that they got married together. All right. But then also Don was like, "Well, I tried to intervene to get him not get married, and I was too late."
So I think that this is another thing that would be explained better in the book.
Yeah.
I didn't understand this either because I don't get the impression that they got married. It's other than he says they did.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's only a short amount of time. Because the movie kind of makes it seem like, him and Alma broke up. He gets fired, and then he calls his brother like 2 days later, and he's already hanging out with Alma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But time must have passed.
So then he's like saying he's lucky he got the escapes. My main man James denies everything because he's old. All right.
Yeah, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, he's old, and this guy's ungrateful. All right. Now John is all freaking out about his dream. Nobody will listen to him. And so now basically John and Ricky, they both can't sleep because they're having bad dreams now. We even have James is starting to have some bad dreams too, but he's listening to some classical music, so his dreams are not as bad. We have Ricky's dreaming. Ricky keeps dreaming the no pulse thing. This is when he gets so freaked out about the no pulse thing that he starts choking his wife. All right. Then now Ricky's wife gives him some tea. All right. And this is when Alma is at the house now it was actually John. She's at the house of John now. And John used to be like a doctor and stuff. So the wife's like, "Hey, you don't remember attacking me this morning?" He's like, "No, I don't remember that." He's like, "I'm just having these bad dreams again." All right. And this is when they were like saying like, they're like, "You got a patient down there." And she's like, "Well, I don't really take patients anymore." Okay. And she's like, "Well, you were also saying last night that she moved." And he's like, "Who moved?" All right. You kept saying no pulse and dead. And he's like, John's like, "Okay, I can explain that story maybe a little later to you." All right. And the wife goes to tell the patient that John doesn't take patients anymore, but the patient's gone. So then John randomly starts shaving, and it looks like he was having like a slow heart attack. All right. So he goes all the way down the stairs. And the wife comes up to him, or the lady. This is like, the problem is that during this scene, the music picked up so much I couldn't really hear what they're all saying because the music was like super loud.
Right.
So the big story about this is basically John said he's okay, but his wife, Willie, wants to go call the doctor's office. So she's calling the doctor's office right now. But then Alma shows up in her mud zombie form and basically gives John a heart attack. So John has now died from a heart attack by looking at a mud zombie. I could respect that.
It happens.
So we have James, all right? And we have James and Ricky in the room and Don, all right? And now they're spilling the beans on... They're going to tell Don the story of the Cheddar Society's secret, okay? And this all happened 50 years ago, and then we get a flashback again on here. And I put
Yay for a flashback.
I put in my notes. They said this is the start of it all, and I said we get a flashback since this is a 2-hour movie.
So is it? So what you said you would cut out some scenes of Ricky and his wife. So like what other things, like would you cut out some of the flashback stuff too, or no?
I mean, no, because the flashbacks make sense because we're seeing the whole story now. But like, okay, for this flashback, so basically we're seeing the whole Cheddar Society, young men. All right. Mm-hmm. They're basically they see Eva. All right. And they're intrigued by it. Okay. And there's like, they go to the diner with her and they're all talking about this stuff about jobs or whatever they're going to be on there. And then we cut to them at a party where they're still all intrigued by Eva. All right.
I thought this was interesting too.
Yeah.
So when in the flashback sequences, so at the party, they're at a costume party, but I wasn't really sure if that was just clothes they were wearing. I couldn't tell when they were wearing costumes and when it was just like the 1930s clothes they were wearing. Because like one of them, it was dressed like a pirate, but everybody else looked like they were just wearing the clothes they normally do.
Yeah. Like some like New England attires and
weird
stuff.
1930s shit. Yeah.
And you had the scene where like, the girl's like, I don't see what's so special about her. All right. And then we cut to them all hanging, like it was like all of the Cheddar guys and her hanging out in this like forest area. Mm-hmm. All like just like with the hat. Like I said, the flashback scenes I want to cut out. It's the very small dialogue between like Ricky and his wife, like because we'll get to it where he's all like explaining to her like, you don't know my. I mean, listen, for the 2-hour movie, I get it's building up this stuff. Okay.
Right.
But there's just like so much of it that I thought some of the stuff could be shortened a little bit.
Okay.
So, I mean, this one did make sense though, because basically we're showing the relationship between Eve and then the Cheddar Society where they're all just hanging out like friends because they like her, I guess, because she's British. All right. And
she's hot.
Yeah, she's hot too. And eventually they're all played around, but Edward falls on her. And that's when he starts to get the lusty eyes for her. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the other guys leave. And then Edward's like, okay, well, I'm leaving with them. Then we see them on a boat ride together. Okay. And so you can see at this point that Edward is smitten a little bit with Eve, while the other guys are kind of like hanging out in the background. Okay.
Yeah.
So
also,
hold on.
I was going to say, this is a scene. Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. You go ahead.
To get to it. So we do have the scene, which happens to many guys. You know what I mean? If we don't take your gimmicks that day.
Yeah.
So apparently our boy Ed had a lip dick over here.
Yeah.
So he couldn't finish the job. And he was like, oh, don't worry about this. I couldn't believe this happens into like the 20s or whatever. She was like, oh, don't worry about it. It happens to lots of guys. I'm like, oh God, once you hear that.
Well done.
Once you hear that.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that. Yeah.
So, but our boy Ed told his crew, the Cheddar Society, I fucked that bitch raw. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is when it gets kind of interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're all like drinking now. So I guess it used to be just a club of drinking. And they're like
before ghost stories.
Before ghost stories, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's hard to understand him in this scene, but this is what I got out of it.
Yeah.
They're all like two of them kept laughing all the whole time, giggling, giggling. So I could be wrong about this one. So I think they came up with the plan that they wanted to run like a train on her. That's what I got out of it. Or they all wanted to like dance with her and like, because they all show up to her house.
Maybe. So I was a little confused about this too, but you see this in a bunch of old movies, where it seems like three guys are dating the same girl because they all acted like.
That looked like there was like hurt there.
There's another movie that's similar to this, and I can't think of what it is, but like, so they're friends, and then she joins their group as a friend, but they all want to fuck her.
Yeah.
And then Edward is the one that actually does fuck her.
Kind of.
For some reason. Like he's kind of. So he's the one that ends up with her.
Yeah.
But then, you know, he has his like erectile dysfunction problem. So he tells the rest of the group that he fucked her anyway, which is what's the cause of all this trouble that they have.
Yeah.
You know, with the murder and everything. But yeah, so I don't think that they're all I think they're all just interested in her. Like, I don't think they're all like trying to fuck her at the same time. Mm-hmm. I think they're all just interested in her, and any of them would have fucked her if they got the chance to.
Well, then they all go to her house drunk, right?
Yeah.
And at first Edward's there and she's like kind of weirded out about it, but she says, okay, you all can come up here. So then they all like slow dance with her. Two of them are just laughing the whole time, or one of them slow dances with her, and she doesn't look too like cool about this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So she's like, okay, well, maybe some of y'all should go home. But James, he's younger at this time. He's like, no, we're not going home. I want my dance. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So that got kind of dark. So it kind of implied that he wanted to fuck her. Yeah.
Exactly. And then she's like, oh, okay, you want to dance? Well, let's dance, you fucking toad. All right.
Oof.
So, you know, some of them are getting, like, you can see like some intense stuff is going on. Then you can see Ed right now getting a little jealous because she's like, well, I'm going to dance with all of them now. Like, she basically, you know, Eva's doing the thing where, like, you know, you're all trying to intimidate me, but I'm going to throw it right back into your faces. And Ed now is getting a little jealous because he actually likes her and stuff. So he's like, and he starts getting mad at her. Like, yo, why are you doing all this stuff? And then he actually like pushes her. She falls, and then she cracks her head with no blood on the fireplace. Mm-hmm. And then all of them now are like, oh shit, you know, I don't feel no pulse and stuff. Like, we think she's dead. And they're like, you can't give her to the cops or anything. They'll arrest us all. So their plan.
Yeah, because what else would you do?
Yeah.
All right.
So their plan now is to put this dead girl into their Jeep and throw her off a cliff in the Jeep.
Okay. No, they're going to put her in the pond.
Yeah, in the pond. Sorry. So
yeah, they sink her in the pond.
So she, oh, by the way, too, I forgot to mention that Eve did kiss one of them, and then Eve did bite one of them. So that's when Ed was actually getting kind of pissed off. Okay, and then he got pissed off. Or actually, James also called her a slut too. So you could tell that's why a lot of this. And another big point too is the reason that Edward pushed her down is because Alma or Eve was about to tell the Cheddar Society that Edward had a limp dick, and boy, he couldn't hear that.
No, exactly. I was going to bring that up because when they called her a slut, you could tell she was about to say that she didn't actually have sex with him.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And then they were going to find out why. So I don't think he didn't intend to kill her, but he did kill her by trying to stop her from talking.
So now they put her in a Jeep and everything. They get out, her body falls out, and they put her right back into the Jeep. Then they put the Jeep in the water, and then they noticed that she was actually alive, and then they actually drowned her, and Ed tried to go save her, but he couldn't. So now they actually did commit murder of drowning her in the lake inside the Jeep.
I was a little confused by this part because they didn't seem to have any problem when they thought she was dead the first time, but they have a huge problem that she's now drowning in the car. Like, dead's dead. Like, what difference does it make? Why are they upset now?
And then James, this is what he's saying, like, yeah, then the president, we all just moved on. No one asked about her at all.
As you do. Nope.
And then Don said nobody asked about her. He was like, nope, nobody ever asked about her at all. She never had anybody go looking for her or anything. She was just like a random. And I couldn't tell.
Well, I mean, that's what you have to do when you kill somebody.
Yeah.
Never talk about it again.
And then Don said that the guilt, he said all this guilt and stuff killed David and Ned. All right. And now they could tell that Gregory and that boy are helping her. And now Don wants to go to the house. And Ricky says he's going to go too. And this is when we have a long, long scene of Ricky and his wife. And basically, just behind this one, even though it was like 10, 15 minutes of the film, was Ricky telling his wife that he's eventually going to tell her his life story, which actually doesn't happen because I believe he dies. Okay.
That wasn't that long. It was just a minute where that's where she says, we've been married for 40 years and I don't know anything about you.
It felt like,
and then he's like, right. And he's like, after this, he's like, we'll go to, well, he says Saint-Tropez, but I've always pronounced it Saint-Tropez. He's like, we'll go to south of France, Saint-Tropez, wherever you want to go, and I'll tell you my life story. And then he kisses her, puts on his scarf, and walks out the door.
So they go by the old abandoned house. All right. Mm-hmm. James never thought he would step foot in this house again because he's old. All right. He's like, and then James is like, why weren't we 30 during that time? We would have done things differently if we were 30. Yeah, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. All right.
Right.
So now they're all walking. Ricky's looking around. He sees the name Eve in the mirror. All right.
Mm-hmm. In the dust. Yeah. It's like written in dust or whatever on the mirror. Yeah.
So now Ricky tells a story to Don. All right. And then James now. So basically, Don falls into a room and hurts his leg. So James decides to go get some help, and it's all snowing out here. So he's driving super fast in the snow, which probably not a good idea. And
that old Rolls Royce he was driving was badass.
Exactly. In the snow, like driving fast. So he sees Ava, a ghost, drives into her. All right. And then he crashes. Mm-hmm. All right. And then when he crashes, he opens up the door and Eva says, Eva's in the car before he crashes. Mm-hmm. And Eva says, dance with me, you little toad. Getting some payback.
Yeah, that's just
the boy. Yeah, the boy that Gregory was hanging around with eventually kills James. So there goes my favorite character. So now Ricky thinks James didn't make it. He was correct. Don says to Ricky, hey, me and you now are the Cheddar Society. I'd have been like, why the fuck do you want to join this group? They're all fucking dying. Huh? So now Ricky's going to go leave to get some help. And he is picked up by Gregory. All right. Yeah. Gregory tells him to get in. Ricky asks, why is he helping Eve? And this is when Gregory says, well, she promised me that I would live forever. I would be immortal. All right. And then Ricky's like, well, she tricked you. He's like, why? Because you're not going to live forever. So he takes that knife that he grabbed earlier and stabs him. And then the car flips over. And of course, Ricky is okay, but Gregory is now dead. God, what a useless character he was.
Yeah. Like I said, he's probably a better character in the book than in this movie. Yeah. I have a feeling.
Like I said, if he was the cult guy who raised her spirit from the dead, that would have been something. But he was just some crazy dude that said weird shit.
Yes, exactly.
So now the water's getting into the room where Don's at. Eva shows up. I put Eva on they're both the same. She shows up to Don while Ricky's trying to go get the police. Ricky finally gets the police, and he's going to drag out the Jeep from 50 years ago. All right, so now Amma is saying to Don, says, I thought you'd be dying to see me. It's been so long. This is when he throws a flashlight at her, and like nothing happens. So now she starts to do some Pinhead lines from Hellraiser, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
She's like, I've come for you dead and wet and cold. All right. So they're also during this time they're taking the car out. She's like, hey, don't you still want to make love to me? All right. And when she does that, she like touches him with her like zombie money hand, and he freaks out.
Yeah.
And then this is when she does her main Pinhead Hellraiser lines, but not as cool. She's
I
like,
thought it was cool. I love this part.
I will take you to places you've never seen. I will show you things you have never seen before. I will see the life run out of you, flesh by flesh and bit by bit. Shouldn't say that part, but it would have been cool.
That's definitely a Pinhead line, though.
Yes. Yeah, all that line she definitely said were very Pin-like.
Mm-hmm.
So she turns into a mud zombie. He freaks out. They pull out the Jeep from 50 years ago. Ricky opens it. A mud zombie falls out and decays more. And then while this happens, I guess her spirit has now left this realm because she has finally escaped the bottom of the Cheddar Society Death Lake. And now her spirit has gone to pasture. Police look at the old body. I wonder if this means Ricky's going to get arrested. Or no, maybe.
Well, maybe.
Limitations, maybe. I don't know.
I doubt there's statute of limitations on murder, but he could have always just said Ed killed her.
There you go.
But then still, he should have told. It's against the law for him not to hold that, keep that a secret for 50 years.
Maybe you could say I read it in the book.
Who knows? I read in the book. I heard this happen. But yeah, so basically her spirit's free because Ricky basically admitted what they did, and now people know that where the body is.
So now Don finally gets up. He layers on the staircase handle. We see the town. And that's it. We're done.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, Don once he breaks his leg, he never leaves the old house again for the entire movie.
Stays there. Yeah, it's like, well, just hate chilling.
When they were showing the town at the very beginning, at the very end, I couldn't tell if that was actually a shot of a real town or if it was a model. What do you think?
Be a real town. I think it was a real town. Look like to me. So, but that's everybody. 1981 Ghost Stories. I thought it was okay. Very interesting to see like a movie prominent with old actors. That's very rare, I would say. Mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty cool. It did drag on so long, but other than that, the story was actually pretty fascinating, I would say.
Yeah. I thought that it was interesting how the older actors adapted to a more modern acting style.
Yeah.
Because, when you watch a movie from the 30s or the 40s even, a lot of those guys were still theater actors. So they kind of overact, like they move around too much. And like they did when they were in theater. But I feel like they weren't really doing that. Like I kind of expected them when I first saw it to be, them have very theatrical acting, but they were subdued. Like you have to be on film, and they looked like a modern actor. They looked like modern actors. I thought that was fantastic. I love this. I just love the idea of, I like the idea of the buried past, where there's like a secret that they've hid, like the characters have hid for so long, and then it finally comes back to haunt them, and it's figured out in the present.
Yeah,
it's a very Stephen King type story, which Peter Straub and Stephen King were peers basically. But yeah, I loved it. I love this movie. I mean, you're right. Like there's things that could be fleshed out more, and there's things that could have been cut out of it to make it a little bit shorter. But I love this film.
That's a fun one, everybody. So, but everybody, thanks for joining us here on the Retro Blood for Ghost Stories. But join us here next week as we actually do The Entity.
Yeah, we're actually going to do The Entity next week. Yeah. And this is going to be a little darker, so it could be more what you would expect from me. Yeah.
And of course, to finish out Alison's month of Ghost Story picks, I believe the last film you wanted to do was The Changeling.
Yep. With Melvin Douglas. And this movie's pretty dark too. So I don't know if you've ever seen it, but You've never seen any of.
No,
you've never seen any of these movies. Yeah, so I can't wait for you to see these last two movies. I think they're both some of my favorites. So The Changeling's great. As far as scariness goes, The Entity scared the shit out of me when I saw it the first time, and so did The Changeling. So I feel like The Changeling at the time I saw it originally was one of the scariest movies I'd ever seen. Like it terrified me. It was so scary. But you're going to probably laugh at the things that scared me. But anyway, we'll get there in a couple of weeks. But next week's going to be The Entity. It's going to be great. So watch that one if you can find it anywhere.
Yeah, it's tough to find. That's why we didn't do it this week, because I just couldn't find it anywhere. Couldn't find it on YouTube or nothing. So luckily,
that's weird. Yeah,
the copy of it. So we'll be watching that copy.
That's why you buy physical media, folks. Physical media forever.
That's true.
Can't take my copy of The Entity away.
Exactly.
I'll shoot you with my guns.
Exactly, brother. You ain't coming to get that entity.
No.
So, Alison, what are we going to leave all of our podcast viewers of a good old Rolling Stone song? What song should we play for everybody?
Oh, let's play Under My Thumb, which is the opening night show from the song from the night of this show that we talked about. And it kind of relates to this movie a little bit.
There you go. Yeah. Under the Thumb. Because they were definitely the Chowder Society was definitely under the thumb of their ghostly British hot lady, Eva, haunting them through generations and generations. All right. But everybody, thanks for joining us here on The Retro Blood. Check us out. Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get all your podcast stuff from. Like and subscribe to The Retro Blood here on YouTube so you can see our pretty faces every week. And we'll be coming out with some more content later on this year, too, with a couple of Lights Out specials. We're trying to get the schedule going with those, but we'll let you all know. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, if you want all the latest news on the Retro Blood podcast. Blue Sky is another one we're on there, too. So check it out, everybody. If you all have any recommendations for any horror films you want us to review, retroblood69@gmail.com. Of course, leave a comment down here below. Tell us if you like our review. Tell us if we missed anything. You know what I mean? Maybe I wasn't in detail about John's dreams or something. You could tell me on the YouTube. Okay.
Tell us how the book is better.
Yeah, tell us how the book is better, because we haven't read it. We're just leaving people's thoughts about it. But everybody, join us here next week for The Entity, for real this time. J.H. Alison, James Kline. See y'all later.
See you guys.